afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is May the 8th, 128th day of the year. 237 days remain of the year's over with. Holidays and observances. It's No Socks Day. Go barefoot. Put on those sandals. Show everybody your toes. World Ovarian Cancer Day. National Have a Coat Day. World Donkey Day. Children's Mental Health Awareness Day. Free Trade Day. Day of the Virgin of Blue Mountain. Iris Day. Make a Book Day. National Coconut Cream Pie Day. Truman Day. National Mealidosis Day. World Red Cross Day. National Student Nurse Day. International Thalassemia Day. Victory Day. National Nurses Week. And Children's Book Week. Well, turning from holidays observances, let's talk about what's in the news. Donna Wood, one of God's anointed, federal judge, who blocked the Trump administration from dismantling 3 agencies. These judges, they're smarter than anybody else. They know more than anybody else. And they're trying to tell everybody how things ought to be. Well, there's a new 12-foot statue of an overweight black woman. It's been unveiled in Times Square. It's a 12-foot tall statue. And it's designed to be in contrast to statues of white men. The figure. Let's see. Cardinals are still trying to decide on the new pope. The Kentucky courthouse where the sheriff shot the judge is plagued by sex abuse allegations. Former Sheriff Sean Nicky Steins is accused of killing Judge Kevin Mullins days after being deposed in a sexual abuse lawsuit. And farmers are touting American-grown rice as an alternative that could become the next kitchen staple. Let's see. Trump is squaring off with Harvard over been ignoring his orders. The Karen Reed prosecutors are calling former investigator Michael Proctor's state police partner to the stand. She's facing second-degree murder charges in the January 2022 death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. The pleaded not guilty to ramming O'Keefe with their Lexus and leaving him to die in a snowstorm after a drunken argument. The judge declared a mistrial after jurors were unable to reach a verdict last year. The defense includes Alan Jackson, David Yarnetti, and Victoria George. There's a special prosecutor representing the Commonwealth. Testimony is in its 3rd week. A number of key witnesses taking the stand yesterday. Maybe it'll be done sooner or later. Bill Gates is pledged to give away nearly all his wealth and close his foundation in 2045. He's pledged to give $200 billion to the world's poorest through his foundation. I begin to believe he may be a sandwich short of a full picnic. Let's see what else we got. Bernie Sanders is upset that anybody would criticize him for spending 6 figures flying on private jets to carry out his Fighting the Oligarchy campaign. He and AOC are covering the country. AOC's constituents know how they really feel about her. And the the fact that she's going to run in 2028 to be president. Please, somebody put her back behind the bar. The CNN, well, in fact, all the liberal media is melting down over Trump's planned military parade. Call it totalitarian. And he's going to host a large-scale military parade in Washington next month. Liberal media is just going nuts. He says it's intended to honor military veterans and active duty service members. It's also the 250th anniversary of the founding of the U.S. Army. And it's also going to be on his 79th birthday. This coincidence has fueled skepticism among his critics. They think it's supposed to be celebrating his birthday. Well, let's see, travel experts are warning flyers to avoid the Newark airport. A lot of disruptions there. The experts are sharing tips on how not to get stranded. Maybe don't fly. The next CNN journalist is speaking out about the Biden cover-up. Said the White House aides made it difficult for the media to talk with Biden. The fact that he was losing the subject is, they say, is not an issue. Well, Disney's backtracking on its LGBTQ stance with plans for a new theme park in an anti-gay country. Abu Dhabi, where they're planning to do the new theme park. Disney says their theme park contradicts the stance of Florida's so-called Don't Say Gay bill. I don't really think it matters what consenting adults do, as long as they don't put it in the front window. Well, a student is facing an investigation for questioning the biological girl being in the boys' locker room. It's just absolutely mind-boggling that everybody gets so upset over these things. In the 1977 California criminal case, they finally arrested a suspect, a 69-year-old former Army private who's living in Ohio. They said advances in DNA and fingerprint collection have led to that. Trump has halted military strikes on the Houthis after they promised to quit attacking ships, but experts are saying the Iran-backed terrorist group is still a major threat. North Korea has launched short-range ballistic missiles into the sea, according to South Korea. AOC is continuing to educate undocumented immigrants on how to avoid being deported, and the border czar is getting ready to unload on her. The conservative firebrands torched blue state immigration policies amid a major lawsuit. The Representative Lauren Boebert, Republican Colorado, has criticized Colorado leaders as the state and city of Denver are currently being sued by the Department of Justice over their immigration policies. And apparently the rights of undocumented take precedent over the rights of American citizens in the mind of so many Democrats. Well, the Columbia's acting president, Columbia University, has slammed the tagging of the campus library by anti-Israeli agitators. They temporarily changed the name to that of a Palestinian terrorist who was killed in, I think, 2017. And Florida man went to Yellowstone National Park and was gored by a bison. The 47-year-old man went to visit. He was attacked after he got too close to the animal in the Lake Village area of the park. Said he had minor injuries, but being gored is still being gored. Country music star Gretchen Wilson won the Masked Singer after severe COVID symptoms kept her from being in the spotlight. She was one of the very first people to get COVID, kept her from the public eye for quite some time. Used car prices have jumped to the highest level since 2023, as all tariffs are causing issues with consumers. Let's see, anything else? Now let's talk about some more haunted military posts. I've gotten emails that listeners seem to like those. Talk about RAF Manston in Kent, England. It's got a rich storied history that spans both world wars, the Cold War, and an aviation center. Originally established during the First World War, served as an emergency landing field on the farmland of Manston. But over the years, the site's strategic importance grew, especially given its proximity to the English Channel, making it an ideal location for both operational military flights as well as training. During World War II, it was on the front line, so to speak, played a significant role in the Battle of Britain. Heavily bombed, leading to the dispersal of personnel and equipment. Despite all the damage, it continued to serve as an emergency landing airfield for bombers coming back from missions that were themselves damaged. Most notable for its role in the Channel Dash in 1942 and as a departure point for Operation Market Garden. During the Cold War of the 50s, it was used by the U.S. Air Force as a strategic air command base, hosting various fighter bomber units. 1960 it was given back to the RAF, and its long runway that was built during World War II was designated one of the UK's master emergency diversion airfields. It ceased flying operations, and the RAF ceased flying operations at Manston in 1999, and it transitioned to civilian use until all its operations ceased in 2014. Today it is most museums like the Spitfire Hurricane Memorial Museum. In 1957, during the U.S. Air Force stay at the base, a strange object was sighted overhead, and pilots not only ordered to intercept it, but also to fire on it. Lieutenant Milton Torres, a 26-year-old Air Force F-86D Sabre pilot with 406 Fighter Interceptor Wing, was stationed at Manston. He was seated in his aircraft on the runway, ready to scramble at a moment's notice. And he got the order to intercept an aircraft exhibiting very unusual flight patterns. Now, during the Cold War, it was assumed it might be a Soviet bomber. But when he achieved a radar lock on the object, he realized it was much too large to be a Soviet aircraft. He was ordered to fire a full salvo of 24 rockets at the object. And he established a weapons lock and closed in on it. Just 10 seconds before he reached firing range, the object began to move away before it vanished at an extremely high rate of speed. Ground radar operator estimated it to be in excess of 1,100 miles an hour, which is moving with a purpose, let me tell you. Well, after the unidentified object disappeared, pilots ordered to come back to base. And then Torres was told that the mission was classified. He was instructed not to discuss it with anybody for any reason. He'd be debriefed the next day. That day, a man in a dark suit wearing an NSA, or National Security Agency badge, arrived for the debriefing. He listened to Torres' account and declared the entire event top secret. Said if he talked to anybody about it, he'd be permanently grounded. So the question becomes, what was that mysterious object encountered over RAF Manston in 1957? Now, of Of course, one theory suggested it was part of a top-secret project, creating phantom aircraft on radar screens to test Soviet air defenses. And while this might seem to be a reasonable explanation, questions arise about the object's rapid departure. The goal was to convince the Soviets of an enemy aircraft in their airspace. It would be more logical that these phantoms traveled with speed consistent with that era's technology. And additionally, the identity of the mysterious NSA visitor who debriefed Lieutenant Torres remains a puzzle. Reports of a strange government or military official, typically dressed in a black suit, have been known to visit a lot of UFO witnesses and demand their silence. That seems to be rather common in UFO literature. Looks like Lieutenant Torres might have been visited by one of the so-called Men in Black, which of course raised a lot of additional questions. Well, from England, let's go to South Dakota, Ellsworth Air Force Base. It located near Rapid City, South Dakota. It's got a history that dates back to 1941. It was originally established as the Rapid City Army Air Base. In those days, what we now know as the Air Force was the air arm of the Army. This Ellsworth was built in response to the needs of World War II and was primarily used to train bomber crews. During World War II, the base was a training site for B-17 Flying Fortress and B-24 Liberator bomber crews. After the war, the base transitioned to support the Strategic Air Command. Played a significant role in the Cold War. Renamed Ellsworth Air Force Base in 1953 to honor Brigadier General Richard Ellsworth, who died in an aircraft accident. And throughout the Cold War, it housed various bomber aircraft, including the B-29 Super Fortress. Later became an integral part of B-52 bombers and bases, and was one of the first bases to get the B-1B Lancer in the mid-1980s, reflecting its ongoing strategic importance in nuclear deterrence and overall U.S. military strategy. Well, today it's still a base for the Air Force. It's home to a 28th Bomb Wing, one of the Air Force's two B-1B Lancer strategic bomber wings. It also supports various other missions and units, including those involved in drone technology and global strike capabilities. During the time that Ellsworth housed ICBMs, they had a strange encounter take place involving not only unidentified aircraft, but also alien beings and maybe an abduction with missing time. 1977, Staff Sergeant Mario Woods and his colleague Michael Johnson were stationed at a control center on guard duty over the missile silos. Woods stepped outside for a few minutes when he noticed a huge glowing object hanging in the sky. Well, his curiosity, of course, was aroused, but soon an alarm sounded indicating the perimeter had been breached. So Woods and Johnson drove toward the breach, and after a few minutes saw a large object adorned with pulsating orange and red and white lights. As they approached, the object seemed to react, becoming brighter and illuminating the entire area. It gave them a sensation they were being lifted out of their seats. And another bright object appeared, much smaller, about the size of 4 to 5 beach balls, and bounced around like a ping pong ball for a while before shooting off at an extreme speed and vanishing. At this point in time, Sergeant Woods noticed 4 figures, 3 small, 1 a little taller, about 20 feet away. And they seemed to be moving toward the vehicle without walking. Next thing the guards knew, they were sitting in their vehicle about 10 miles from their last location, facing the only entry or exit without any tire marks, as if the vehicle had been put there. And this wasn't the first. Nor would it be the last time strange objects or creatures were sighted near U.S. military bases, especially those that housed nuclear weapons. And given mankind's propensity for violence, it does seem logical any visitors with an interest in this planet and its inhabitants would be intrigued by our military capabilities and would try to investigate them. Well, from Ellsworth, let's go to Kirtland Air Force Base, not too far from here in New Mexico. Kirtland is located in Albuquerque. It's a rich history that spans several decades. It began before World War II. Its origins trace back to the late 30s when Albuquerque was the key location due to a strategic position in the American West. Initially, it was the Albuquerque Army Air Base, established to support military aircraft maintenance and operations during World War II, named after Colonel Royal Kirkland, a pioneer in military aviation in 1942. Well, during World War II, the base was a critical site for bomber training and later housed operations related to the Manhattan Project, which were crucial for the development and testing of nuclear weapons. This included the use of the base for building special silver-plate aircraft that would carry the atomic bombs. Well, after World War II, Kirtland Air Force Base expanded significantly during the Cold War, involved in various military research and development projects, including those related to nuclear weapons. The base became home to several key organizations such as the Air Force Special Weapons Center and later the Air Force Nuclear Weapons Center, reflecting its importance in national defense. Kirtland also played a role in the development and testing of nuclear capabilities throughout the Cold War and beyond, adapting to changing military needs and technologies over the decades. Today, it remains a crucial part of the Air Force infrastructure, supporting numerous military and research operations. On the evening of November 4th, 1957, two Civil Aeronautics Administration controllers, R.M. Kaiser and E.G. Brink, were on duty in the Kirtland Air Force Base control tower when they saw a white light moving eastward across the airfield. Well, they detected a radar contact confirming the presence of a solid object. Before their attention shifted to a second one, the new object descended rapidly toward the end of runway 26. Upon reaching a height of no more than 30 feet, it began to slowly traverse the airfield. It was described as egg-shaped and vertically elongated, about 15 to 20 feet tall, came within 3,000 feet of the tower, hovered there for a few minutes, and then moved toward the eastern boundary of the base. At that point in time, it accelerated at a high rate of speed and vanished into the sky. Well, Kaiser and Brink contacted the Albuquerque Radar Approach Control Center, which confirmed a radar lock on an unknown target. Target then headed south toward the Albuquerque low-frequency range station, changed direction, and went back toward Kirtland. As it reached the southern end of the main north-south runway, it stopped and hovered. Remained there for a few minutes before positioning itself behind a departing Curtiss C-46 Commando cargo plane, which followed it for about 14 miles. And then whatever this was went back to its previous position and faded from view. The tower encounter lasted about 25 minutes. Although the 1957 UFO encounter is most well known, it's not the first UFO encounter at Kirtland. July of 1952, Airman First Class J.M. Maryland reported seeing between 8 and 10 orange-colored balls of light in a triangle or V-shaped formation. These objects flew across the length of Kirtland Air Force Base at an extremely high speed, covering the distance in just 3 to 4 seconds before vanishing from view. Well, on a warm summer evening in 2010, a cleaning crew working at a remote section of the base stopped in their tracks at an unusual sight. There was an old lady with white hair dressed in a shabby gray outfit sweeping an old dirt road with an antiquated corn husk broom. Curious, they checked with each other, and 3 had seen her, but the 4th one hadn't. Moments later, the lady vanished without a trace on the flat open land with nowhere to hide. Took her broom with her, too. Speculation, of course, rose about her identity. Given that the land was leased from the local tribe and she appeared to be Native American, some wondered if they had glimpsed the spirit of a tribal woman still caring for her ancestral ground. The mystery of the sleeping lady has lingered. There are more questions and answers, and she's been reported several other times over the years. But this isn't the only tale of spectral sightings in that secluded part of the base. Patrols often report encountering a mysterious lady in white who vanishes as they approach. And it is conceivable that the lady in white is the same spirit seen sweeping the road. The colors light gray and white could easily be confused from a distance, suggesting that those sightings might be of the same ghostly presence. Another patrolman had a strange encounter while patrolling the housing area in Village V, reported seeing a figure on the roof of one of the housing units. And as he approached, he saw the figure jump. Rushing to where he expected to find a body, he didn't find any evidence anybody had fallen. Later, he learned that the former resident of that property had taken her own life by jumping off a nearby bridge. Other incident took place at an inn where people reported hearing the sounds of screaming and fighting. But when investigating, not only was the building empty, it was also closed for business, but uninhabited at the time of the reported fight. They never did determine the purpose of the screaming and the yelling. Well, from Albuquerque, let's go to Camp Hansen in Okinawa. It's nestled on the subtropical island of Okinawa. Camp Hansen is a testament to the enduring strategic importance of this Pacific outpost. Established in the late 1950s, the base was named in honor of Private Dale Hansen, a young Marine who posthumously got the Medal of Honor for his valor during the First Battle of Okinawa in World War II. His actions, much like the base itself, symbolize the bravery and dedication that defined the U.S. Marine Corps. Now, in the years after World War II, as geopolitical tensions shifted during the Cold War, Okinawa came out as a pivotal fulcrum in the Pacific region. Establishment of Cape Hansen during this period marked an expansion of U.S. military capabilities in Asia, reflecting the island's strategic importance. Today, sprawling over a vast expanse of land, Cape Hansen is equipped with extensive live fire ranges, urban warfare training sites, and a number of other facilities that prepare Marines and Allied forces for the complexities of modern combat. And as is the case of many military bases, they're actually a community unto themselves, sometimes as large as a city, but with all the necessary facilities to include jails. It said there was a Marine station at Camp Hansen assigned to the brig, and having some off-duty time available, he decided to visit a popular tourist spot on the island, Aha Falls. Unfortunately, while there, he lost his life. After his death, it was reported that an apparition was seen following the route he took while performing his nightly rounds at the jail. And this occurrence reportedly happened so frequently that part of the jail where his spirit was observed, while not closed down, was only used when no other options were available. Although there is a report that an airman lost his life at Aha Falls, this occurred in 2017, nearly 15 years after the original sightings, which does raise the question, what happened to that particular Marine? Well, Gate 3 is on the northeast side of the base, and it's shrouded in tales and ghostly legends that have persisted over the years. Most well-known story involves the apparition of a spectral guard who's often seen approaching the gate. And according to reports from both military personnel and the locals, this ghostly figure is a Marine dressed in a World War II uniform. He appears dirty and bloodied as if he'd just seen combat. He's said to appear during the late night hours asking for a light for a cigarette, but when he's approached or spoken to, he vanishes. You're seen him to be hiding behind a sign before suddenly moving out and crossing the road. Now, since then, paranormal activity has been reported so often from this location, some service personnel refuse to take guard duty there, and the gate's even been closed for a period of time. Now, today it's open and back in use, and the legends of Gate 3 add to the element of mystery and intrigue that defines Camp Hansen. Now, it's not only bases that have stories of haunting, ships as well. Like USS Yorktown, CV-10. It's an Essex-class aircraft carrier commissioned by the U.S. Navy during World War II. Launched in 1943, it was named in honor of its predecessor, the USS Yorktown CV-5, which was launched during the Battle of the Midway. Now, Yorktown CV-10 earned the nickname the Fighting Lady for its significant contributions to the Pacific theater, including actions in the Marshall Islands, the Marianas, and the Battle of the Indian Gulf. Also instrumental in raids on Japan and support for ground operations at both Iwo Jima and Okinawa. And for its wartime service, the carrier got an impressive 11 battle stars and a Presidential Unit Citation. Following World War II, the Yorktown was decommissioned but was later modified and modernized during the Cold War. It became one of the first aircraft carriers equipped with an angled flight deck to support jet operations. Back into service in time for the Korean War and later played a role in the Vietnam War, provided air support and reconnaissance missions. In addition to its military service, it participated in space exploration efforts, served as a recovery ship for Apollo 8 mission in 1968. The mission marked the first manned spacecraft to orbit the moon, adding to the carrier's legacy. When decommissioned for the final time in 1970, the Yorktown's now a museum, birthed at Patriots Point in Charleston, South Carolina. Stands as a National Historic Landmark honoring the bravery and dedication of the sailors and airmen that served on board. It's also known for reports of paranormal activities with stories of ghostly sightings and unexplained occurrences, adding an unusual dimension to its rich history. September 1985, a visitor encountered something that absolutely defied explanation. While exploring the historic aircraft carrier, he took the opportunity to go deeper into the ship's lower decks. He wanted to see as much as possible, so he descended 2 or 3 decks below midship, opening doors, navigating hallways, and what you might call a self-guided tour. At one point, he opened a door and was absolutely stunned by what he found. Inside was a scene straight out of the 1940s. Several men dressed in World War II Navy uniforms occupied what appeared to be a dental bay. 2 men sat in dentist chairs, and others were moving about, chatting and working. Blinking of tools and a hum of conversation filled the room and created a scene that seemed astonishingly authentic. Well, as the visitor stepped into view, the room was silent. Every man in the room turned to look at him. Startled and embarrassed, he raised his hand in apology and said, "Excuse me, gentlemen," and closed the doors and went on his exploration. Assuming he'd stumbled on a military reenactment or a film set, he didn't think much about it. 30 minutes later, he reunited with his family on a hangar deck and got ready to leave the ship. And as they exited, he mentioned the unusual scene to an attendant at the main gate, asked if a movie was being filmed on board. The attendant, with a puzzled expression, replied there was no reenactment or film crew on schedule that day. In fact, he stated firmly nobody had been on the ship aside from the visitors and the staff. Well, a staff member with years of experience on board the Yorktown had an encounter that actually added to the ship's mysterious reputation. While walking through a sparsely furnished room deep inside the vessel, they felt a distinct tug on their radio microphone, which was attached by a cord. Familiar with the sensation of the cord snagging, they stopped and looked around to see what might have caused it. And at that point in time, they realized they were standing in the middle of a room at least 5 feet from the nearest wall or object that could have grabbed the mic cord. And the cord that could only stretch about 2 feet could have possibly reached anything nearby. This was impossible to explain and left the staff member with a distinct impression that an unseen presence had made itself known. While the visit to the Yorktown proved to be an unforgettable and unsettling experience for 2 friends, the tour began in the hangar bay, seemingly normal until they ventured into the engine room deep inside the ship. Descending more flights of stairs than expected, they entered a room that was far hotter and stuffier than the rest of the ship. Surprisingly enough, one of the friends said that it felt colder to her, the first sign that something might be amiss. But while exploring, they noticed the room didn't match any photos of the engine room they'd seen online. The metallic noise of the ship was deafening, but the air felt heavy and oppressive. On a catwalk above, a man dressed in black passed one of them and said, "Are you ladies looking for a job today?" And when they said no, he moved on, and so did they. Later, her friend mentioned a family of 3 had passed them, but can't see anybody except that one man. As they continued, the walkway became increasingly rusty and unstable, leading to a gaping hole descending further into the ship. As they looked, one of them suddenly realized her friend who'd been in front of her was now behind her, but they hadn't passed each other. Well, as they moved through the ship, an eerie silence enveloped them. All ship sounds vanished. The hum of engines, footsteps, and conversations were replaced with an oppressive quiet. And they left quickly, not before realizing they'd somehow lost an entire hour of time. Neither remembered coming back up the stairs. They'd descended earlier, and the room's disrepair seemed at odds with the rest of the restored ship. Oddly, once they stepped off the Yorktown's deck, they felt relief, as if a presence had been left behind. The tour guide manager for a local ghost tour company had an unsettling encounter during an investigation on board the USS Yorktown. While leading a small group of guests, they decided to explore the lower levels of the ship, including the engine room. As they descended the final flight of stairs, a voice suddenly echoed from the empty engine room, shouting, "Get out!" Well, the engine room was an restricted area to authorized personnel requiring a special clearance to enter. None of the group had access to the space, and the voice carried an undeniable tone of authority as though whoever or whatever was there was actually guarding that area. In the quiet corner of the USS Yorktown, a young woman was diligently cleaning one of the rooms. She moved through the space carefully, tidying up the tables, collecting discarded trash, making sure everything was in order. She adjusted all the chairs neatly underneath the tables, went outside to get a few more cleaning supplies, came back and found the room totally disarranged. The chairs she'd so carefully arranged were now scattered across the floor, facing every direction, completely out of place. And the room was silent, with no sound of the furniture moving, but the chairs were clearly disturbed. Well, she stood frozen for a few moments, not sure what to do, and the silence of the room seemed to be tense, leaving her to wonder had the chairs moved on their own or had something unseen disrupted her work. One among the many tales tied to the Yorktown is the story of a fighter pilot known as Smoky Stover, a man whose early premonition of his own death became part of the ship's legend. On the eve of a major engagement during Operation Hailstorm, he sought out the chaplain to share an unsettling dream he'd experienced the night before. In his dream, he saw himself flying his mission as planned, but being shot down by the Japanese. In his dream, he was captured, taken to a nearby island, interrogated, marched around, and executed. Although he was disturbed by the dream, he was reassured by the chaplain, who dismissed the dream as a manifestation of anxiety rather than a prediction. The chaplain urged him to focus on his training and skill and offered to hope that everything would be fine. Well, tragically, his dream came to pass. During the operation, his aircraft was shot down. He bailed out into the water, but the rescue efforts were delayed till the battle was concluded. When the mission ended, search crews were dispatched, but no trace of Stover was ever found. His disappearance left a legacy, with many believing his spirit lingers, a reminder of the sacrifices made during wartime. Well, the story of Smoky Stover continues to add a layer of poignancy and mystery to the haunted reputation of the USS Yorktown. Visitors and crew alike wonder if his restless soul somehow remains tied to the ship on which he once served. And from the Yorktown, let's go to Naval Station Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Located on the southern coast of Oahu, been a cornerstone U.S. naval operation in the Pacific since it was established in 1908. Initially developed as a coaling and repair station, its strategic location made it a vital asset for projecting U.S. naval power across the Pacific. By the early 20th century, Pearl Harbor had expanded into a full-fledged naval base, complete with dry docks, shipyards, and even support facilities. December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor became the site of one of the most pivotal events in U.S. history. That was a surprise attack by the Imperial Japanese Navy that led to the destruction of a significant portion of the Pacific Fleet, including the sinking of the Arizona and damage to numerous other vessels. This attack propelled the United States into World War II and marked the beginning of the Pacific Theater of Operations. The harbor's iconic sunken battleship memorials, particularly the USS Arizona Memorial, serve as a lasting tribute to those who lost their lives that day. In the decades following World War II, the Pearl Harbor evolved into a central hub for U.S. naval and joint military operations in the Pacific. Integrated with Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam in 2010, it now supports a diverse range of missions, including fleet maintenance, logistics, and readiness operations. Both a historic landmark and an active military installation, Pearl Harbor remains a symbol of U.S. resilience and military strength. Well, the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 resulted in the death of 2,403 U.S. personnel. That included 68 civilians, with thousands more wounded. Many of the fatalities occurred aboard ships, like the Arizona, where over 1,100 sailors and Marines lost their lives in an instance as the ship was destroyed and sank. Sheer magnitude of the tragedy, coupled with the sudden and violent nature of the deaths, has led some to believe that the spirits of those who perished may actually linger. Over the years, numerous hauntings have been reported around Pearl Harbor, particularly near the USS Arizona Memorial, the mooring quays, and surrounding waters. These accounts include sightings of ghostly figures, disembodied voices, and the feeling of unease often attributed to energy left behind by the lives of abruptly cut short on that fateful day. And for many folks, these phenomena serve as poignant reminders of sacrifices made during one of the darkest days in U.S. history. Ford Island, at the heart of Pearl Harbor, holds a legacy of duty, sacrifice, and tragedy, and according to countless witnesses, there's a lingering spectral presence. One of the most frequently encountered spirits there is Charlie, a ghostly sailor said to haunt the island's military installations. He's described as mischievous yet watchful. A remnant of Pearl Harbor's past seems unwilling to leave his post. His presence is marked by inexplicable events that many now attribute directly to him. Faucets in empty rooms turn on without cause, heavy metal doors slam shut on their own, and radios emit bursts of static or even change stations abruptly. Those who have encountered Charlie often report the sound of keys jingling if he's still making his rounds. On quieter nights, his footsteps can be heard echoing through empty corridors. Only starting just short of coming into sight. Well, beyond Charlie, Ford Island itself is a hotspot of paranormal activity. Residents of the island reported a variety of eerie phenomena over the years, including ghostly voices, phantom footsteps, and objects moving of their own accord. Lights and electronics are known to switch on and off spontaneously, baffling even the most skeptical witnesses. Ford Island's airstrip, a vital part of Pearl Harbor's operations during World War II, has gained a chilling reputation over the decades. Shadowy figures are reported moving across the airfield, visible only for fleeting moments before vanishing into the night. Witnesses describe these figures as tall and indistinct shapes that seem to materialize from the darkness only to dissolve into the shadows moments later. And even more unsettling is the glowing mist that occasionally drifts along the airstrip. This phenomenon, reported by numerous personnel and visitors, defies logical explanation. Mist appears to emit its own light, undisturbed by the wind, often vanishes as abruptly as it appears. Witnesses' account is a overwhelming sense of unease and the feeling of being watched whenever they encounter this mist. Adding to the mystery are reports of faint disembodied voices and the sound of distant footsteps echoing across the airstrip late at night. And these sounds, paired with the shadowy apparitions, have led many to believe the airstrip is haunted by the spirits of those who served and perished during Pearl Harbor's darkest day. USS Arizona Memorial is both a sacred site and a focal point for ghostly encounters. Rested above the sunken battleship, the memorial marks the final resting place of over 900 sailors unable to escape the ship during the attack. Visitors and staff alike reported feeling a sudden cold spots while touring the memorial, often accompanied by a profound sense of sadness. Disembodied voices are among the most frequently reported phenomena. Witnesses describe hearing murmured conversations or distant cries that seem to emanate from the waters beneath the memorial. Apparitions dressed in Navy uniforms have also been seen walking along the decks of the memorial, only to disappear when approached. One particularly haunting account involves a visitor who claimed to have seen a sailor standing at attention near the edge of the memorial. When the visitor turned to speak to him, the sailor had vanished into the thin air. On a clear day at Pearl Harbor, a visitor exploring the USS Missouri experienced something unsettling. Standing on the main deck facing the harbor, they heard the distinct hum of aircraft engines, reminiscent of the Mitsubishi A6M-Zeros that attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941. The sound of those engines, vivid and unmistakable, seemed to skim just above the water, accompanied by the phantom crack of anti-aircraft guns firing into the sky. It was as if that fragment of history is being replayed in the air around them. Well, while stationed on a destroyer in Pearl Harbor from 2009 to 2013, a Navy sailor experienced a chilling event during a duty watch on the night of December 6th, the eve of the Pearl Harbor attack anniversary. Serving as the topside rover, he patrolled the ship in full security gear. About midnight, he went to the bridge to cool off, enjoying the quiet of the harbor. Suddenly, every radio, including his walkie-talkie, emitted a loud, static-filled blast before falling silent. That sound left the sailor's hair standing on end, and rushing to the quarterdeck, he asked the petty officer of the watch and others if they heard the same, but nobody experienced anything. Well, confused, of course, he completed his shift, but that event lingered in his mind. It wasn't until the next day, when somebody mentioned the anniversary of the attack, he considered the significance of the timing. He wondered if it was a freak technical glitch or a fleeting connection to the lives lost on that day. And to this day, that unexplained moment haunts him, a reminder of the enduring echoes of Pearl Harbor's history. In 2009, a military couple lived near Pearl Harbor on land had been among the first targeted in the 1941 attack. Our home soon became the center of unsettling occurrences, beginning with random late-night doorbell rings. Despite maintenance checks and inquiries with neighbors, no cause was ever found, and the disturbances grew more frequent. One night, after a series of frantic doorbell rings, the wife saw a shadowy figure in the bedroom doorway, described as wearing a hat. And her dog responded as well, growling at the presence. Though the house was always secured at night, the front door was often found mysteriously unlocked the next day. But to stop the activity, the wife turned to spiritual cleansing with sage and black salt. After consistent efforts, the disturbances quit, but the experiences left a lasting impression. December 8, 1942, exactly a year and a day after the attack on Pearl Harbor, radar operators at the base detected an unidentified aircraft approaching from the direction of Japan. Alarms were sounded and fighter planes were scrambled to intercept the intruder, but despite their best efforts, that mysterious aircraft couldn't be located. Witnesses described the radar blip as erratic, appearing and disappearing in ways that defied the technology of the time. No visual confirmation of the aircraft was ever made. No wreckage or evidence of a crash was ever found. Over the years, of course, the story of the ghost plane has become one of Pearl Harbor's most enduring mysteries, with some speculating it was the spectral echo of a lost Japanese aircraft tied to the events of December 7, 1941. Now, not all of Pearl Harbor's hauntings are tied to the tragic events of December 7th. Some tales trace their origin to the base's broader history and the lives of those who worked there long before the attack. One such account centers on the Red Hill Underground Fuel Storage Facilities, which is a massive system of tunnels and tanks carved into the rock of Oahu during World War II. In the dimly lit corridors of the Red Hill tunnels, workers and maintenance crews have reported seeing the spirits of a man dressed in 1930s era civilian work clothes. Descriptions vary, but he's often seen wearing a dusty button-up shirt and trousers, his head covered with a wide brim hat, usually spotted at a distance, walking purposefully along the tunnel walls before abruptly vanishing. A particularly unsettling encounter occurred when a technician working a late-night shift heard a faint sound of heavy boots echoing down the tunnel. Thinking it was a colleague, he called out, but didn't get a response. Moments later, saw the silhouette of a man moving slowly through the faint glow of his flashlight. And as the technician approached, the figure turned and stared at him for a moment before dissolving into the shadows. Shaken, the technician left the tunnel, only to later discover from co-workers he was the only one scheduled to be in that area at that time. And some who've encountered the figure believe he may be the ghost of a construction worker who died during the tunnel's construction. That was a project fraught with dangers and accidents due to the intense heat and the volatile materials. Others speculate the spirit may belong to somebody who worked at the facility long after its completion. His restless energy bound to the site by unfinished business. Well, regardless of his origins, the ghostly figure in the Red Hill Tunnel served as a reminder of Pearl Harbor's history and its haunting that extend far beyond the events of December 7th. Now, military housing at Schofield Barracks in Ohiwa, Hawaii has its own chilling tales, including one in 2009 that was experienced by a family stationed there. Disturbances began subtly, doors closing on their own, TV repeatedly switching to the news. Late one night, the wife dreamed of a shadowy woman holding a baby approaching her bed. That same moment, her husband woke up in terror, feeling somebody breathing down on him. Disturbed, she researched the area's history and uncovered a tragic story. A German woman named Bianca Ward, 9 months pregnant, was murdered by her Army Sergeant husband on that same street. Wife decided to call out to Bianca by name, telling her it was okay to move on to the light, and after that, the disturbances stopped. Late one night at Borcher's Gate, a sentry stood to watch. That gate's named after Lance Corporal Borcher, a Marine ambushed and killed there in the 1990s. The shift was quiet till the car approached, slowed and drove off without stopping. 20 minutes later, that same car came back from the opposite direction. Now, the driver was a familiar officer's wife, handed over her ID and 2 cups of coffee. At that point, she asked, "Where's the other guy?" And the sentry said, "I'm the only one on duty here tonight." Well, she said when she had been there earlier, she had seen 2 guards, one outside and one inside the guard shack. When the sentry shared that story later, veteran guards explained that those occurrences were not unusual. Many believe Corporal Borcher's spirit still watches over the post, ensuring no sentry would suffer his tragic fate. Now, reincarnation, the belief that a soul can be reborn into a new body after death, has fascinated humanity for centuries. It suggests people may carry memories or experiences from past lives. At Pearl Harbor, where thousands lost their lives in the devastating 1941 attack, the weight of history and unresolved stories may explain why some believe spirits return or even reincarnate. Well, that brings us around to the story of Sharon Johnson, a woman who claimed to be the reincarnation of a sailor named John Gillespie, who died during the attack on Pearl Harbor. In 1979, she sought hypnosis from Frank Baranowski to help with weight loss. While the sessions were successful in shedding the pounds, they did unearth something far more profound, a recurring dream she'd experienced since childhood. The dream was always the same, a vision of thick smoke and chaos, and years later she visited Oahu for the first time, and her feeling of deja vu was striking. At the USS Arizona Memorial, she was overcome with emotion. That night, the dream returned more vivid than ever. Under hypnosis, she revealed a lot of astonishing details. She said she had been a man named John Gillespie, born in 1921 in Omaha, Nebraska. As she described life on board the USS Nevada during the attack on Pearl Harbor, named several individuals, including Captain Scandal, Paymaster Cooper, and Ensign Tossig, figures she couldn't have known about, even recall details of Tossig's injuries during the attack. During multiple hypnosis sessions, she provided a serial number and other information about her supposed past life. Well, Frank Baranowski was intrigued by her claims and sought to verify the story. And to his astonishment, 8 of the 9 names she mentioned appear on the USS Nevada's record. Although Ensign Tossig wouldn't miss that they discovered he had been in Hawaii that day and confirmed he'd suffered severe injuries during the attack. Frank also located census records proving a man named John Gillespie did exist, although his name didn't appear on official rosters of the USS Nevada. Turns out a devastating fire destroyed many Navy records from World War II, leaving the possibility that Gillespie's name was lost to history as a result of the fire. Well, Sharon's vivid memories combined with corroborating evidence remain a compelling mystery, raising questions about the nature of memory and life after death. Well, Pearl Harbor spirits, whether playful or somber, stand as a poignant reminder of the lives lost and the sacrifices made in its history. Those who encounter these spectral figures, the experience aren't just chilling, they're powerful connections to the past, ensuring that the stories of Pearl Harbor's heroes are never forgotten. And from Pearl Harbor, let's go to Eglin Air Force Base in Florida. Situated in the midst of the vast landscape of Northwest Florida, Eglin Air Force Base stands as a monument to the evolution of military aviation and warfare. Originally, it was established in 1935 as the Valparaiso Bombing and Gunnery Range. It was renamed in 1937 to honor Lieutenant Colonel Frederick Eglin, an Air Corps pioneer whose early death in a plane crash marked a poignant reminder of the perils faced by aviators. His story is one of transformation from a modest practice range and most significant Air Force bases in the world, mirroring the broader technological advancements and strategic shifts in military doctrine over the decades. From its early days, Eglin played a crucial role during World War II, expanding rapidly to become a key training ground for pilots and air crews. War years saw the base refine tactics and technologies would define modern aerial combat, including pioneering work with drones and advanced munitions. And as the Cold War took shape, its importance only grew, serving as a critical testing ground for emerging missile technologies and tactics that would underpin U.S. military strategy in the ensuing decades. Today, Eglin Air Force Base is not just a testament to past glories, but a vibrant hub of military innovation, hosting the Air Force Special Operations Command and continuing to push the boundaries of what's possible in airspace and cyberspace warfare. Its sprawling ranges and cutting-edge facilities ensure Eglin remains at the forefront of defense technology. January 31st, 1976, military policemen observed a bluish-green object hovering over Duke Field, one of the auxiliary airfields on Eglin Air Force Base. The witness first saw the object, which had a light-colored exhaust trail, while making his rounds at 4:35 in the morning. The object remained visible until it finally disappeared at first light about 7 in the morning. This sight was corroborated by additional base personnel, approximately 6 or 7 others. Although they attempted to capture photographic evidence, the object didn't appear in any of the photos taken or was detected by any of the base's radar stations. A more recent encounter also sparked interest and added to the ongoing mystery surrounding the area. Just off the coast of Florida, within the Eglin Air Force Base's training range, an event occurred January 26, 2023. Military pilot not only visually spotted a UFO, but tracked it on radar and captured photographic evidence. During a routine training flight, the pilot initially detected four objects at altitude between 16 and 18,000 feet, appearing to fly in formation on his radar screen. Targeting these unidentified objects, he obtained a clear view and used his aircraft's onboard camera to snap several photos. Unfortunately, the video camera was inoperative, a pre-existing issue before takeoff. Well, the pilot described the object as cone-shaped, similar to the Apollo space capsule, with a rounded bottom and three-dimensional cone top. Featured a gray panel surface with a central red-orange hue and a vertically oriented engine attached to its side. The object, approximately 12 feet in diameter, seemed to move very slowly, or maybe it was hovering stationary. As he approached, his radar malfunctioned and the object descended into the clouds and disappeared. Investigation into this sighting has spurred a lot of debate. While some consider it a genuine UFO encounter, others suggest a more terrestrial explanation, such as a malfunction in the aircraft's radar, which had actually failed 3 times in recent months due to a tripped circuit breaker fuse. Some researchers propose the object might have been a balloon, potentially a weather or commercial balloon. Although this could explain the sighting, somebody such as a fighter pilot should certainly have been able to distinguish between a balloon and something more unconventional. It seems the strange occurrence is not limited to the skies above the base, as there are also reports of unusual encounters inside the buildings. One family living on base frequently heard the sounds of a young girl laughing and crying, along with the sounds of running up and down the hallway when their children were accounted for. Additionally, a large black figure was seen by various family members. The young son, around 5 years old at the time, visitor remembers playing with the shadow figure. It only appeared to him at night. Nearby Garnier Bayou, part of which is within Eglin Air Force Base, is also reputed to be haunted, with frequent reports of sightings believed to be local Native Americans. One misty night, shadowy figures thought to be the spirits of Native Americans who were tragically displaced from their land could be seen among the bayous. This haunting phenomena raises the question of whether these apparitions could be related to the shadow figure encountered by the family living not far from Garnier Bayou. Intriguingly, their young son interacted with the similar shadowy presence, suggesting a possible link between the historical spirits in the bayou and spirits reported in their home. And on that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow, and once again, we'll be talking about stories that are strange and unusual. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show, saying have a truly great